Archie, issue 150. Not so fast. Sabrina's on her way to school, and her aunt, despite their very different personalities in this comic, both want to come along with her. And in a twist, it's not out of curiosity to see what Sabrina's life is like. They're going to be her substitute teachers. How are two sisters hired to be a substitute for one teacher? It could make sense that they got teaching degrees in all the time they've been alive, except they don't get out much. Sabrina says wow, which is sweet because I'd expect most versions of her to be uncomfortable and worried, because her aunts are really casual about magic. Reggie tries to send a book at Archie's head, and fortunately Hilda stops him with magic and makes the book go into Reggie's mouth, and says satisfyingly, "Wasn't that fun, Reggie?" I love that, though it contrasts with her saying that she likes Reggie because he's evil and a guy after her own heart because of it. She'd only like him for that if she also likes that he bothers Archie, because he's usually the only person he bothers. Conveniently, nobody comments on the magic Hilda did in front of everyone. Zelda says they're gonna change the way they do lessons, which is probably not legal. But then when she summons some mail bags and it turns out they're from little Archie's mail board, my excitement for the story gets destroyed and replaced with disappointment at how lame the story's become. Because Archie shouldn't have found these mail bags familiar when they have no reason to exist in universe. I was looking forward to all the variety and how they're gonna use magic to teach. But it's sad to say that even the 90s comic did this plot better, and I hated that story. But that actually tried to do the plot. This gave up and broke the fourth wall into pieces. Why does Reggie bother asking how the aunts do that? He knows Sabrina's a witch. What does solving a puzzle have to do with science? The story just wastes her time predictably trying to apply fan mail to school courses. I'm not even reading the fan mail, mainly because it's in a different font, but it's also not something that should be in the panels. And by the next day, Weatherby says that every student behaved as if by magic. Little Archie issue 151, which is for the new year. We see Father Time say he had a rotten year because of Sabrina's family for no reason, as opposed to any other witch family. Sabrina says homework is a breeze when you're a witch and uses magic to make pens write on floating paper, and then tries to hand in the wrong subject of homework. I hope she still had her algebra homework. Reggie then remembers giving himself points to the other football team by accident. How'd he do that by accident? At least he's thanked for it. Veronica shouldn't have refused to go to the dance with him over an accident, let alone called him a traitor. That was immature of her. We see Reggie find out there's nothing in his hat, and Archie calls his magic show the best comedy show of the year. So it was still a success because it was still entertaining, even if it humiliated him. He finds a lamp and wonders if there's anything inside. At first, seeing the focus on Reggie made me think that the story was wasting my time in a Sabrina story. But it's worth it if it just has bad things happen to him. Conveniently, he sends out a talking baby called the New Year on his way to meet 1979. So, they're personified? Like in Sonic the Comic? A snowstorm came up and he went in the lamp to stay warm. But then someone put a cork in the lamp and trapped him for no reason. We really should be told why that happened. New Year shakes Reggie's hand and predictably says he'll grant him a wish, even though he's not a genie. So how does that make sense? So Reggie wants all of his new magic tricks to come out right. I'm glad he's not too ambitious, as in wishing to take over the world. Then Reggie wastes time trying to grab him and tackle him to get him to grant 2 more wishes when he was told he only got 1 wish, and for all he knows, this could just cause him to undo the wish he granted him. Father Time tells Sabrina that he's still waiting for 1980 to show up. Why did the two of them do this in Riverdale? Wouldn't it be in a separate dimension and planet, like in Sonic the Comic? Sabrina sees Reggie and casts a spell to make the New Year guy vanish, and he puts Reggie in pain as the story ends. Little Archie, issue 152. It's a funny. After Paige is wasted, Sabrina tells Zelda that her teacher told her to bake something to feed everyone in class, so she's making a gingerbread man, but doesn't know how to carry it into the oven even though she's a witch. Zelda casts a spell to make it come to life for the purpose of making it march into the oven, and it doesn't decide to do that because she somehow didn't brainwash it into doing that. She could have easily floated it into the oven like you'd expect. Instead, Sabrina wants to give it a face because its talking humanized him. And it starts telling jokes. You never know where you're gonna get in the Sabrina stories. Surprisingly, when he's told to get in the stove, he does so, and none of them hesitate to bake him. But apparently the spell has him able to survive this. And Jughead says he likes Sabrina's new friend. I have to assume that everyone's thinking of him as just a guy wearing a costume, so that's why he's not freaking everyone out. Lucky for him, his joke somehow makes people laugh, and the story ends with Weatherby seeing the comedy act, while Grundy appreciates it, even though what she told Sabrina to do was give the entire class some food, and she didn't even do that, even though she could have easily zapped up food. Little Archie issue 153, Super Witch. Sabrina's aunt sees Sabrina sleep in, and Hilda says that when she was Sabrina's age, she sold magic spells door to door. I guess she means she sold books with the spells in them and they were obscure. And when she was Sabrina's age, she lived in the witch world. Zelda says that Hilda was Sabrina's age 465 years ago. So now Hilda's even older in this parallel universe. That's what, 4 different universes? She's 213, isn't she? Surprisingly, Sabrina, despite being a kid, thinks Hilda's right and decides to get a job at the chocolate shop. Why does she think a mere kid would be allowed to get a job? Weren't there child labor laws back then? It's not like she's trying to get a job as a paper girl. Pop-Tate surprises me with some uncalled for sexism, saying he was expecting to hire a boy because he thinks using a mop is heavy work, even though women are associated with cleaning. Sabrina casts a spell to make her a super witch all day long, as Pop-Tate looks at her surprised the entire time she says this. Or she could have just made herself super strong without the superhero costume. Sabrina walks out of some smoke in a superhero costume, and Pop-Tate assumes she's not Sabrina and hires her just because of her outfit, which explains why she did it. But makes no sense because the whole reason he didn't hire Sabrina was that she's a girl, and this person is also clearly a girl. Sabrina gets told to carry dirty dishes, and he has every reason to look worried when she carries the dishes because she's carrying too many at once, risking something falling and breaking. She goes over to some potential customers and advertises for the shop. The kids just came from wrestling practice and feel mean. It's shocking that Sabrina gets threatened even though she's a girl, in the 80s. It's satisfying to see the bully get thrown into the restaurant. She carries the other kids inside, and fortunately, they do actually order something. And it's even realistic enough that since they're only reluctant customers, a kid only orders a soda. Then Pop-Tate says that some big band music brought customers in thanks to Sabrina. Lots of kids want to get in, but the shop's too small, so Sabrina punches a hole in the roof and the wall. He tells her he'll see her tomorrow, too frightened of her to call her out, and she's tired from working all day and goes to bed. And her aunts are still unsatisfied because they don't know why she's sleeping this time. Little Archie issue 154, one for the book. Sabrina gets offered a hot chocolate by Zelda, and then their program on TV gets interrupted by reports of flying saucers. That never happened because no one would believe that anyone who saw them actually saw UFOs, as opposed to weather balloons. Sabrina says that it'd be fun to see a saucer in front of her fly, and Zelda casts a spell to make it possible. And for no reason, she also humanizes it, making it able to talk and naming it. So this would mean they'd get even more sad if it broke, which would be inevitable. It flies out of the window, the predictable happens, and eventually Hilda says they have to catch the saucer before it frightens half the country. Isn't it out of character for Hilda to not want half the country to be frightened? Why doesn't she just tell Zelda to warp the saucer back to her? Sabrina can warp Reggie away. The saucer flies past a bird that's hopefully not literally talking, or that'd be stupid. The story is just the same thing happening over and over where people see the saucer. How did the saucer fly to the mayor's head by accident? Somehow the saucer can understand what a bird says to it, and it gets threatened by airships with missiles. Then Sabrina flies up to it and it kisses her, saying it doesn't want to fly anymore, fortunately being smart enough to learn his lesson after all. In fact, he wanted to be nailed to the wall with a sign below him saying, "Home Sweet Home." I feel bad for him. Little Archie issue 155, Circus Days. Sabrina says this is a story about the day the circus came to Riverdale. If it was about the day she came to Riverdale, it'd be more interesting. It's always seemed odd that the series liked to start out without showing that. Sabrina bores me, showing that, go figure, the circus has big cats. Salem gets hugged as Sabrina says that she's glad he's just a cute kitten. It is interesting to see a cat ride on a horse. Sabrina tempts fate by saying she's glad Salem can't join the circus, and he dreams of walking on the high wire. So he runs away and reveals that he can talk to a guy, but he assumes he's dreaming and closes the door. But the next morning, he finds out there really is a talking cat, conveniently deciding that it wasn't a dream this time, just because it's day. He's depressed at barely getting anything to eat in a cage. I guess he wanted to do this to him because it was cheaper. We know Salem's got plenty of magical powers by now, including powers that could warp as much food to him as he wants. But he's sad that he doesn't care about him, that's the point. So it's a good thing he warped home when he wanted to see Sabrina at home, because with how serious the tone was being, I expected it to somehow require Sabrina to go save him. Sabrina hugs Salem and recklessly offers the cat some milk and cookies. At least it's a magic cat and she's a witch, so they could have cast a spell to make their cat have no problems digesting milk. This story by Dexter Taylor sucked. It was exciting to see Sabrina's aunts be her substitute teachers. But the only good part of the story was Reggie getting a book thrown in his mouth. After that, it irritates me by giving up on logic and flooding us with fan mail the characters have no reason to be familiar with. Why would the aunts do this instead of just teaching properly? Why wouldn't the writers have gotten the hint that they have to keep fan mail separate from the stories? You'd think every reader would have told them to stop it after the first time. I guess they didn't know better because they're old kids, so they didn't care what they read. This was a confusing story by Dexter Taylor. Why are Father Time and the New Year personification doing this in Riverdale, or anywhere on Earth? What a coincidence that they met Reggie and Sabrina. It turns out that the New Year baby can hide in a lamp to get warm in the winter, and someone quirked it for no reason, just to have Reggie free him and get granted a wish. But then he grabs the idiot ball and demands more wishes, when you should know that's a complete waste of time. So Sabrina has to save the day. At least it seems creative that the New Year baby can grant a wish. And it was interesting that Reggie wasted his wish on magic trick success. It seems like all of these stories are by Dexter Taylor. This story by Dexter Taylor didn't make any sense. Zelda would have just floated the gingerbread man to the oven, not made it come to life and be obsessed with telling jokes. That wouldn't make people want to eat him. And Zelda should have known better because she knew Sabrina was supposed to feed her entire class. And yet Grundy doesn't remind her of this and immediately got impatient with a comedian she didn't ask for. And the story ends when Weatherby sees him, when it could have easily continued and had a proper ending. But at least the story was really creative. This story by Dexter Taylor is about Sabrina trying to get a job to be more respectable after Hilda calls her lazy. And then because it's the 80s, she's not going to get hired by Pop Tate because she's not a boy. Never mind the fact that she's just a kid, too. She gets a job because he's so impressed by her superhero costume. It'd make more sense if part of the spell that summoned her superhero costume also made it so that he'd agree to hire her. Because that's what she thought about when casting the spell, because she thought that would happen. It was entertaining and satisfying to see Sabrina succeed so much for her boss and get away with using magic, because she's a nice person. I bet we'll never see her work for him again. Hopefully it can be assumed that she keeps working for him in later issues off screen. You'd think they'd write a Super Witch story about Hilda since she's the one who, in canon, called herself Super Witch and dressed up like that. This story by Dexter Taylor is a boring one where Zelda makes a saucer start flying to show off. But for no reason she gave it life, so the saucer wants to go fly outside. And it's just the same thing over and over again where people see it. And there's no reason for any of the witches to try to fly after the saucer, with no idea where it'll be next, instead of warping it home, which would be faster. This story by Dexter Taylor is about Sabrina taking Salem with her on a trip to the circus with her friends. I assume because she just likes her cat that much. But she could have easily not brought him there and caused the rest of the story to happen. It's contrived because nobody brings a cat to the circus. So because Sabrina said she's glad he can't join the circus, when she could have easily not said that, of course Salem wants fame and tries to join the circus as a talking cat, finally making himself able to talk with his powers. And I can assume the reason he usually doesn't talk in front of Sabrina then, is because there was a story dedicated to problems resulting from him talking in front of people, which you'd think would have warned him that he won't be treated right after how Reggie treated him. He doesn't get given enough to eat, so he warps home. That's another thing that could have very easily not happened. I imagine most guys in the situation would have given the talking cat enough to eat, at the very least, so that he wouldn't complain. And if it can talk, who knows what else it can do to you? Good thing the story had Salem warp home instead of padding itself out with Sabrina rescuing him.